Hello, everyone, again. Welcome you all to the Decolonial Critic Lab today at the University of Connecticut. My name is Ali Asgar. Ali Asgar Tara. I go by they, them, and she, her pronoun. A little bit about myself. I'm a Bangladeshi transgender artist currently based in Brooklyn, New York. In my visual art practice, I combine video, text, drawing, and community performance to create political, site-responsive, and cross-disciplinary collaborations. This semester, I'm the Artist-In-Residence at the University of Connecticut's Asian and Asian American Studies Institute. I will lead regular encounter, and I'm already reading regular encounter through the Decolonial Critic Lab, a bi-weekly meeting and discussion group designed to provoke critical discussion among the students and the faculty community of the UConn, which aims to exchange the connection between decolonial methods and how Asia has been constructed, represented, mediated, and conceptualized by artists, curators, activists, scholars across the globe at the end of the 20th century and the early 21st century. Today, I'm very delighted to invite artist and community person from Bangladesh, Yasmin Jahan Nupur, as my guest for the Decolonial Critic Lab. Yasmin's body of work spans between 12 years of practice, and fascinating artist, fascinating person I know from Bangladesh. And it's my honor to invite them for the Decolonial Critic Lab today to share their work and practice with us. I'll read a small biography information about Nupur, but obviously Nupur's work is greater than the biographical information, as you'll see on her presentation. Yasmin Jahan Nupur is a Bangladeshi conceptual artist based in Dhaka, Bangladesh. Yasmin lives outside of Dhaka in a small suburban town named Narayanganj, known for its textile trade during the pre-colonial Bengal. Yasmin runs her studio and community-driven art practice from Narayanganj. Yasmin's visual and performance practice focuses on the lost trajectory and the history of colonization in the Bengal Delta, and her work is influenced by the ecological and community-driven aspects of life. She has a long practice of working in close collaboration with the Jamdani weavers at her town, through which she engages deeply with the architecture, landscape, and speaks for the shifting and displacement of textile and Jamdani craftsmanship of Bangla. Jamdani is a 2000 years old weaving technique of traditional Bengal, which continues the lost craftsmanship of world famous dhakai musline textile, which has been lost during the British colonial period in Bengal after the Industrial Revolution in Europe. Yasmin is an active member of the Dhaka-based art nonprofit and collective Britto Art Trust, an award-winning artist, and has been exhibited her work across the globe. Welcome, Yasmin Appa, Nupur Appa. I will give you the floor to share your work and share with us about your decolonial methodologies, how you're incorporating them in your art practice. And then after finishing your presentation, I will have some questions for you, but also whoever are joining us today in this Decolonial Critic Lab, they can also propose some question to you, and that's how we'll run the rest of the time. Thank you.
Thank you, Tara. Just sharing my presentation first. Thanks for detailed, wonderful biography.
Oh, I hope it. Your work is better than your biographical information, but I have.
No, it's wonderful. I never heard about myself. It's not sharing, no? What happened now?
Let me recheck. I made you co-host.
Yeah, I saw that. No, last time
You are the co-host.
Yeah.
So if you go to the sharing bar, like share screen, it's not allowing you to share.
Okay. Got it.
Okay.
Okay. So I think I don't need to introduce myself because Tara already detailed tell, and she is my wonderful friend, and you live in Bangladesh. Live Bangladesh how many years now?
I left Bangladesh in
not
2016, so it's exactly
yeah,
6 years. Yeah.
6 years. So yeah, and I think we every week we talk.
Yeah.
Every week we have the long chat, necessary and unnecessary. So I love her so much.
Chats are necessary, no problem.
No, thank you so much to invite me here. I'm Yasmin Jahan Nupur, and I'm visual artist, and I'm from actually Chittagong. Chittagong is one part of Bangladesh, and my degrees and my education, my university, I done from Chittagong University in drawing and painting, and then I moved to Dhaka 2006, and then I started multidisciplinary artwork. I can't say that I'm doing well, but I try my best. So now I want to talking about the textile, because I work on textile since now 12, 13 years. And I work very special textile called Jamdani. Jamdani actually came from muslin. So muslin, you know, we all know about the muslin, because we here in all Bangladeshi, I can see, except Livia, but Livia also know about that muslin because she also working on textile since long year. So here I want to talk about the muslin, how actually muslin disappeared from the world, because it was once upon a time, it was a pride for the Dhaka, and that textile actually made by Dhaka and made by here, like where I live now in Narayanganj. And we can't make the muslin right now because the weather almost changed, and the water of the river Shitalokka already changed and is becoming so dirty. And it has so many tale about the muslin, because when the East India Company came in Bangladesh, they wanted to establish their machine, their loom in here, in Indian subcontinent. And it also has the tale that so many they cut off their lower thumb, so that the loom can't weave their own cloth. So muslin is what is muslin actually? So muslin is one kind of fabric. That fabric is a very long white plain fabric. The fabric grow through the ring. It was the finest fabric in the world, and it was a totally hand weaving, and after the East India Company came, like after the British colonial time, the machine, like they actually wanted to put their loom here, machine loom, and we actually that actually disappear from the world. So if we want to see the muslin in person, you can't see that. You have to go in museum, and all museum can't afford keep the muslin, you know. So this is the Dhaka map from early 18th century. Like so, here is showing where the muslin is a Dhaka. So Dhaka is a old name and is a Sonargaon. Can you see the presentation, Tara? Is
yes,
it okay?
I can see the presentation. Yeah, I can see your mouse cursor and everything. Everything is fine.
Thank you. So this is the Sonargaon. Sonargaon is very near to my house actually, and the muslin actually weave very early morning, like right now in Bangladesh. Now is a 4 a.m. So it's hard to weave, and it's hard to technically arrange everything in early in the morning because the weather was calm down. So it had very related with weather, water, and air, because it's when the sun will be heat, it can't weave because it's very finest. So it could be take out from the loom. So I put here Mughal painting, miniature painting. This make you understand that how was the muslin, because it was so fine, it was so transparent. If anyone put 7 layer, you can see the body, you know. So you can see here 2 princes of the Mughal era. They are from Aurangzeb's sons, maybe. And you see the fabric, how finest. You can see their body also, you know, and design, texture. You feel that how fine is the textile, the fabric, and Mughal era, it was reached the highest count. You know, in all textile has the count. You know, is kind of the thread count, like. In Mughal era, the weavers, all weavers reached the like 800 to 1,200 count. Like you can't see the thread on visually. You have to like, you know, it's so that fine. It was that fine actually. So this is the Jeburun-Nessa, one of the Mughal princess miniature painting, and you know she actually wore the 7 layer. You can see the 7 layer. It's only 1 layer. You know and then you see her inner body design of the fabric. So the from muslin, it has that 4 names. So Jamdani is the one of the muslin type. So still Jamdani is here now. Still we can see Jamdani, and Jamdani is the technique and everything like a muslin, but it's not that fine. Muslin was. It is also finest, but it's not that fine like muslin. So Jamdani, you can now we can weave like 200 count, and 200 count also, like it need 6 to 1 year to weave one cloth, one fabric, like plain sheet. And the weaver actually modify their motif, their pattern on the fabric. So jam means flower, and dani means vase, flower vase. So you can see in the Jamdani motif, so many motifs they actually weave, and that this also very finest fabric in Bangladesh. Also Kolkata also does some Jamdani. They also have actually. So I work like now 13 year working with Jamdani, and I work to weavers. So the technique and everything. So my my concern about the work, how the fabric actually making the sculpture, how the fabric actually become the sculpture, like soft sculpture. So I try to use the fabric in my work. I'm very much inspired by Kabir. So Kabir was one of the poet. There I put one of the his poem, and Kabir was weaver, you know. So he used to weave his own clothes, and also he used to write his poems. So I love this poem so much. I think if Tara can read a little bit. Can you?
Yeah, sure. I wave your name on the loom of my mind to make my garment when you come to me. My loom has 10,000 threads to make my garment when you come to me. The sun and moon watch while I wear your name. The sun and the moon hear while I count your name. There are the wedge I get by night, day and night to deposit in the lotus bank of my heart. I wave your name on the loom of my mind to clean and soften 10,000 threads and to comb the twists and knots of my thoughts. No more shall I wave a garment of pain, for you have come to me, drawn by my waving, carelessly waving your name on the loom of my mind. Kabir.
Thank you, Tara. Let's talk about the thousand thread is in a loom. It has to be, install the thread one by one, and it's also talking about the spirituality about the loom, because the loom also, I believe, is very related to the body and gesture of the body, and this is the one of the drawing of indigenous weaving. So from muslin and to indigenous textile, indigenous weaving is little different. I mean, that they are the oldest weaving technique, but it still is very different. So I work both sides. This is the one of the technique, like how you install, how you arrange your thread on the loom. So this is the one of the small loom, and it has to be like, you can see the thread is coming to here and there, and if you mistake one thread, you have to make it again. So you have to start it again from beginning. So this is the one of the small loom, and this is it's called backstop loom. So it has to be wrapped on your waist, and it has to be weaving on your own hand. So now I'm coming to my some of my work. Is called Tipu Sultan dress, and so it's 2015. I went to London, where I meet with Livia. So I visited the British Museum, and suddenly I saw one dress like hang on like that. So their name it has the mention the Tipu Sultan dress, and it also mentioned is from Dhaka muslin. And I just stuck there, like, wow, I never seen before the Dhaka muslin in person. And this was the first time I saw the Dhaka muslin, and of course the Tipu Sultan dress. And Tipu Sultan was last ruler of in subcontinent. So, and he was the we know everything about the Tipu Sultan, you know. So he had a very long history about the East India Company. He had to fight, he had to defend on the war, and he had to his two sons are taken the temporary hostage by Lord Cornwallis. And it was so pathetic, and he was killed by East India Company, and Tipu Sultan called Tiger of the Tipu Sultan. Tiger means, you know, so tiger is a more powerful symbol in Bangladesh. And I read one history about the Tipu Sultan when he died, actually. So he wore one dresses. It was a muslin. So it's just click in my mind, like, wow, like one king died on the road, and he had wore one muslin dresses, and it was not that dresses. It was another dresses, but in British Museum he installed all his stuff, all his throne, all his soul, dresses, jewelry, and like I was so like stuck, and I went so many times in British Museum. I just stuck in the Tipu Sultan dress. I don't know why. So, you know, there is a motif in muslin. Actually, you can't. It wasn't weave, it has to be designed the own hand. So it was a golden thread on design. So you can see there's a little flower floral design on the dresses. So I did one performance in Manchester University in the UK, 2016. So I made a fabric on Jamdani, and I also, you know, there is a little floral design from Tipu Sultan dresses. So the sheet like make one of the Tipu Sultan dress, and I perform as like I'm a tailor and I'm sewing the Tipu Sultan dress. So the design and everything I drawn from the museum, and the performance was 6 hours every day, like 2 days, 12 hours total. So I can embroidery, but I can't make dresses, you know, it is so complicated for me. I can do weave, I can do embroidery, but I can't make dress. So this was the first time I made the dress. So yeah. So it was like just 6 hours, 12 hours. I just arranged everything, making the Tipu Sultan dress, thinking about him, thinking about the battlefield, how he actually faced all difficulty with British East India Company, and like historically, like after 1799, the British actually started rule in subcontinent, and then we just it just came everything in our subcontinent, it was started disappearing our own pride, like that muslin was disappeared that time. There is so many things, so many agriculture, so many things happened at that time. So this is the final product in a final install in Tipu Sultan dresses. This is the another project called Our Own Private Anthology. So it's about the roti. So in Bangladesh, in India, even in Pakistan, we have to eat our roti morning and evening. So it's so difficult for me how make the roti. I'm not used to, but all women has to know how to make the roti. It is the like if you can't make roti, you are not lady, you are not woman. Like here, in Bangladesh, you have to have make roti for every morning. So I put one recipe here. If anyone took, you can take the recipe, you can follow the recipe. So it's just mine because I'm not used to making roti every morning, but in our house, everyone like roti for morning, for the breakfast and for dinner. And it's one kind of job, like the woman has to have making the household work and some work you have to keep your whole life. Like the work actually started generation by generation. I call it a grandmother job, like how grandmother actually made the roti, and still I'm making, still my daughter will be making. Like it's non-stop job for women. It's kind of daily life, the work actually come out from the daily life, how we spend our life, how we spend our time in daily routine. So I started this project 2014 in Shilpakala Academy in Bangladesh. I started first 22 kilo of flour. So I'm started the doing in the gallery. So it's a kind of, how you household coming inside the gallery and what's the reaction of the viewers and audience. So so I tried to make a big dough that time. So the big dough became a part of my body, and the body also became a sculpture. And it was a 3-hour performance. I didn't take any rest or any stop. I just made the dough continuously. So it was 2016 in SEAW in Newark. It was I think 40-minute performance that time. So on these days, I made the dough, and I asked so many questions to the viewer, and it was the viewer also reply me, and some question also they asked me. Says this work is like ongoing project. And 2016 again I did in Serendipity, which is curated by Nikhil Chopra. Nikhil Chopra is one of my very good friend, and is also curated by HS Art Foundation. So that time I started 100 kilo flour and 100 kilo 100 kilo and how many days it was a 9 hours every day. I think four days. Yeah, 4 days. So I didn't take any rest, any break during the performance time. It was so exhausted. It was so like after one day, the dough become a rotted. The ant and all insects come to eating the dough, and it was so smelly as well, because it's just like busting all. And so that is the almost, I think, last last day. So I'm coming, my recent project is called Let Me Get You a Nice Cup of Tea. That I started in 2019. And 2019, I started about thinking about the tea, actually how it came on my table, on our table, and then I started research. So this project actually curated by Diana Campbell. So Diana is the Jamdani Foundation's curator, and then she invited me for the summit and freeze. And when I started about the tea, and I found so many hidden history about tea and worker and East India Company. It's so interesting, and at the same time it's so pathetic, so painful same time. The research actually going through a lot of yeah. So the tea actually came in Bangladesh, I think 18th century is a and it's also bring East India Company, British, obviously. And it has the long story about the trade. Is actually started trading, British actually started trading to China, silk, tea, and other stuff. And that time, also they smuggling the opium for the tea. So this is the another thing, because in 19th century, the whole China actually become addicted for the opium, and the same time this is the one tale. They also installed the one so many tea tree, because they wanted to make tea garden in Indian subcontinent. So they started first time in India, in Assam, the tea garden. And when I started the research, I found the tea tree actually here before, very long year before. We used to eat tea leaves with onion and garlic, as like a shark, how we do eat. But we didn't know that how it has to make the tea like a drink. And then when it started in Assam, they also started in Chittagong, was the first time, and then Sylhet, and 19th century, the East India Company actually offered the tea free in the stations, in the social gathering. I don't think it's written right now, but in some of the station in rail station, you can see the recipe also written by East India Company, like how you make your own tea, how you enjoy your own tea. So you can find some of the old old rail station. There is a mention like the recipe and how you use, how you make your own tea, and how you what is say that what is the beneficial of the tea, how healthy the tea actually. So this is very interesting history actually, and I read one book about the Sea of Poppies. Is all talking about the how tea come and how the opium actually started smuggling India to China in 19th century and 18th century. British rule actually collective and so many farm of agriculturally, they actually grow the opium here in India, and then they smuggling the whole opium to China because they need tea, because tea was that time very high prices in 19th century. And then they started the afternoon tea here, like it's very stylish gesture in British gesture in subcontinent. Like in afternoon tea is like all women gather in the table, gather in the in a zone. They invited the other lady to come in, join the afternoon tea. And she's the Anna Russell was who is the first lady who started the afternoon tea in 1814 century 14. So in China actually had a very long history about the tea, because they used to drink tea like 4,000 years ago, and they know how the recipe, what's the recipe, and recipe was all the time was so hidden. They didn't let know in foreign business like others people the recipe, how they're making the tea. They sell, but they never let the know how this was the recipe, how the tea actually grown, everything. So the British was so clever and Dutch was so clever. That time they actually sent the priest to China, because it's like a that time also so many missionary established in China. So the priest had the work, know about the recipe and know about the technique of the making garden, how. So it was written so many book how they actually stole the old theory of the theory of the making garden and all thing. And so this is the one of the painting is from Guangzhou in China, tea productions, oil painting. The artist was unknown. So I found from Peabody Museum. It was so interesting that time, you know, you can see the production of the tea and they selling, the boating the tea. So it's very interesting. That was one of the very big wallpaper, handmade one wallpaper, artist unknown paper. So the wallpaper talking about the trading of the silk, trading of the tea, trading of the ceramics from China to Dutch. So this is the image from archive, like Assam and Sri Lanka. So in 18th century, 19th century, they started the agriculture in subcontinent, including the Sri Lanka and Burma, Myanmar. So there was one image how actually, that time it was totally handmade. So it was one of my like long reasons. I think I couldn't explain you properly, but the emotion, everything. But when I was into it, I was so deeply understand why is like the worker of the tea garden. It was still they're leaving the under leave, you know, still they're leaving the rule of the colonial rule, British rule. Still all garden still has the British rule, and the paid and everything is like, and the manager, tea garden manager, it still looks their dress up still is very British. So I make a small garden, making my own tea. So you can see there is a lemon balm and hibiscus. Hibiscus also I'm making planted in my garden. So this is the collecting the tea leaves. So some of tea leaves I brought from Sylhet, and I followed the recipe, very old recipe from China, like from the old book, and follow every step of the recipe, like how it's making, how has to be shading, and how has to be drying, everything. So I made like 4 or 5 green tea, black tea from the actual tea leaves, and some of leaves from my garden is like lavender, hibiscus, ginger, and tulsi. So this is the and then is in a jar. So this is the thing, and the bring in the table, bring in the audience, to the audience, bring the whole things and invite the audience to having tea with me. So you can see there is a one map tablecloth. The tablecloth is showing the East India Company, how was the rule in the whole world that time. The map talking about the 1856 century, 56 year. And I also made the napkin also talking about the opium. So I invited the people in online, in personal, in audience. So there was a schedule in every day. It was in Freeze, that was in the first performance in Freeze, 2019, and it was a 3 hours, 6 day. So every slot was 20 minutes. So the guests had to be sign in their slot. So they had to book the slot, and they can come in, come to the table, and then we have a lot of conversations. I also offer what kind of tea actually they want. So this is 2020 in Dhaka Summit. I made the wallpaper, the back wallpaper actually made for the work, and this wallpaper actually made from tea tent, tea color. So I had to boil the color with tea leaves for the long time and then making the color. So it's also same time in Summit, it was more longer, it like 6 day, maybe 6 hours every day. It was a shifting of the morning shifting and evening shifting. And I invite so many people also book the slot, and people also come in. It was like crazy that time. So I had a lot of conversation with the audience. So I had the opportunity to talk about the history, and I also learned so many things from there. And the own recipe. So I made 12 recipe by hand, and then I offered the viewer what kind of recipe, what kind of tea actually they want. And then I described about the little history about the like how tea come and how it's just become our daily life. I think I almost done. I'm sorry, I'm not good in English actually. So sometimes I can't make you understand maybe. Your sound. Tara, you are your.
Oh, sorry. Thank you, Nupurapa. If you can stop the screen share, then we can go back to our main screen and see how everyone is feeling. Good. I never saw you giving a presentation. So when I was looking at your presentation, I made a couple of quick notes. I was fascinated with your Tipu Sultan's dress, that project, right? You're talking about the stolen museum object, which came from a colonizer's colonial land by the colonizer in the British Museum. And it's a very active mode of critiquing the museum space as well, how you are doing the work. So I just want to quickly respond to what I have written down when I'm looking at your presentation, and feel free, other people, if you have any comments, if you want to raise your hand and jump in, please do after me. So I really love the project of the Tipu Sultan, because how you're criticizing the Western Museum space, which is a British museum, which is very known for the stolen item, it's archiving and representing still now, right? Why we have to go to Britain to see a Tipu Sultan's dress, but you are also traveling there, but also at the same time, all through your performance project, labor is something which is very visible to me in all of your project. Racialized labor during the colonial time, those are coming back and forth again, because you do durational performance, which are very labor oriented. When you are making, actively playing the persona of a tailor, and making this dress in the museum spaces, you are also speaking about the labor go behind those making those dresses, right? When you're working with the Jamdani weavers, you are also talking about the labor associated with it. So none of these are very easy tasks. It takes a lot and lots of time. So it's very handmade, it's very tactile, it's very personal, it's very intense in some extent. Also the roti, I find it very interesting that wheat is not a native grain from South Asia. It came through the colonizer in our land, right? But also, again, going back into the gendered labor, like who were supposed to do all these domestic tasks, and you're bringing it outside in the performance spaces, interacting with your audience, and kind of somehow challenging them and changing its volume, like because you were exaggerating it, right? So every day in the daily household work, every woman is expected to make rotis, and maybe you also do it for your family. That gendered labor and how it can change its volume when you're presenting the work. It also reminds me of Georgia O'Keeffe, because I remember I was reading about O'Keeffe, and when O'Keeffe was staying on that desert in New Mexico, as a ritual practice, O'Keeffe also used to do the ritual practice of making bread. Actually, the way you laid down your bread recipe on the performance, Georgia O'Keeffe also have those recipes for how she made her bread with native ingredient from the desert in New Mexico. And the tea performance, I also going back to what I'm saying, it's very that same racialized labor and the colonial labor system, which also existing in Bangladesh, you are pointing it out. But my question for you will be, when you are critiquing on the labor and the racialized labor and the gendered labor and the colonial spaces and critiquing the museum spaces, how does it feel for you to travel with your body in these spaces, right? Many of the project was produced in Western museum spaces for a Western audience, with white curators. How do you negotiate with how you want to present your body through these very laborious, long durational performance projects? If you can quickly respond to that question.
I think in the tea project, if I tell you about the story, when I did in London, no one doesn't know how tea actually come. What about the labor cost? And British people doesn't know at all. You know, they just want to drink tea, that's it. But they don't know the history about, they build the history in other side of the country, other side of the world, you know. So when I talk about the labor, about the stealing the plant, stealing the recipe, you know, there was like, oh, I didn't know that. So, you know, the history and is kind of overhead. They can't go inside what is actually happening. It's so political, like the political, how, you know, the making the people is kind of eyewash. You can't feel the people can't feel the pain of the others people, you know. It's so painful. When I talk with the worker from Sylhet, from Chittagong, so it's so painful because they paid very low, especially the women is very low rate, maybe 150 or 180 taka one day is not more than $2-3 every day. So, and everyday labor is like 12-hour labor, and every woman had to pick up like 25 kilo leaves, you know, tea leaves. So it's not easy to pick up the 25 kilo tea leaves from the garden. So in the sun and in the rain. So, but the cups and how tea actually come, how tea actually travel, how they follow the date is so political globally. Still, you know, for me, it's also, I think I can't explain you properly, but something is so painful.
It is painful, as you said, that the labor system and the oppression and all this thing. But on the speaking of the decolonization method, I was fascinated how you're going back to the native ingredient, like the sorrel. And because I live in Crown Heights, and whenever I go to West Indian stores, the grocery store, I'll see the dried sorrel. They make drink out of it, and you can make tea out of it. Actually, you're showing hibiscus or sorrel. So sorrel are like the or other herbs you're collecting, which some of them I hope are native to the. Did you do any research around like what are the native ingredients to make tea out of without harming the land or having a harmful labor system like tea gardening?
Yeah, like you can find the herbs around you. You have to know what you use it, what for. So still, this is also very political, you know, because the colonial actually didn't let us allow to use the herbs, you know, is because they made the medicine like we can't use the Ayurvedic. Is so which was very powerful, which was very healthy for the Asian people or African people. So this is the another thing, you know, another you need to think another level. So like tulsi is so much powerful herbs, who is really helpful for your throat, helpful for your fever, you know.
Now the reverse colonization and the industrialization is happening. I see Tulsi tea on the fancy,
the fancy packets
in my neighborhood. But anyway, I don't want to take up all the time. I can go on and on about your work and ask more questions, but I want to give people some opportunity if they have thought, feedback, question. If you want to know anything from Yasmin, please feel free to ask. Yes, Firozbhai.
Nupur, excellent work. I mean, I'm a Bangladeshi, born and raised in Bangladesh, but I was trying to understand that how the history of colonial cruelty is regularly invisibilized to this day. Is that, you know, the Jamdani production, the muslin production, and it's the history, like to this day, when the garment workers are exploited. I mean, one of the things that I often do when I teach here in Canada, when my students don't remember where I'm from, I tell them that, my ancestors have been clothing you for the past 300 years. So please do know that where I'm from and do know, what's the history. And when you were talking about, that, British people, they don't know about the history that, they're drinking tea, the disconnection. So they can take benefit from something. But I think it's also the willful ignorance, because this ignorance actually benefits them, because knowing what's the history, knowing its connectivity, they will have to be accountable, right? So I think Dr. Nafis will also agree with me, is that the colonial double standard, the cruelty is possible all the places they have colonized, but in the homeland, they always have to play that niceness. We are the civilized. And I think the recent portrayal of Ukraine has shown the double standard once again in the news medias, right? So when you were talking about the history of tea, you're talking about the history of clothes, you're talking about the history of grains. And I was thinking, have things really changed that much? I mean, so, and I think what was really fascinating, Purapa, that hats off to you, is that the art's capacity to feel us the embodied experience. I mean, we read something, a lot of the time, the knowledge production is also colonial. I mean, who is writing? Who has the capacity to write? Whose writing gets validation, right? So when you are writing through art, when you are expressing things, and I was thinking when you were telling me that, because, we are Bangladeshis, English is not our language. We feel in Bangla. We are compelled to function in English in a colonial knowledge production system. It's not our choice. So, I mean, if you ask the English-speaking people to express few things in Bangla, you'll understand their sarcasm in about a few seconds. So you've done a fantastic job, and hats off to you. Thank you, Nupur.
Oh, no, thank you. Like, I think I couldn't make you proper understand because from my language barrier, I can't speak fluently like you, but yeah.
Quickly responding to Firoz before I go to Nafisa for the question and the response. On the last part where Firoz is saying the language, and it's coming back again and again in conversation, because Nupurapa is also multiple times you felt that urge of saying, oh, I don't speak very good English, right? Like why we have to do that, why we have to feel sorry for whatever English we speak. Because we are speaking in someone else's language to make it palatable for a global audience. It should be enough. So whatever language you speak, we shouldn't say, sorry, I don't speak enough English. My English is not fluent. But also, like, the reason I invited you, not only because of your work, I also wanted to emphasize that point, that many of the time, and which includes me, the artists who get more visibility, more access to an institution in Western institutions, those are the artists who are quote unquote smart and well-spoken. And the well-spoken and smartness often connects to how well you can speak English. So your skill on the language determines your intellectuality or artistic capacity also most of the time. So, so that was kind of the back on my mind when I was curating this program. I wanted to bring people, regardless of their language proficiency in English, but rather how they can present the work, how the work can be more accessible, because online visibility does matter to people right, in these days. Like if I upload this material, maybe 10 people are listening that on a Zoom call, but 200 people will listen that later on a YouTube channel. And those visibilities are important for artists and creatives who are working actively on the decolonization method and working on Asia as a region. Yes, please, Nafisa.
Let's just start. It's gonna be so fun to style.
Yeah, I'm really moved by those amazing and powerful conversations and the amazing presentation, Nupurapa, you did. So yeah, I'm kind of like piggybacking on what Tara and Firoz, both of you said about, you know, like living within those colonial spaces and being forced to speak colonial language, and you know, all these burdens that come with this, you know, like when we're trying to make yourself visible. So I guess I mean, I'm not a performance artist, I'm a researcher. I have worked with Bangladeshi garment workers for a really long time, and I move across borders. I grew up in Bangladesh, studied there, but I'm not a garment worker myself. I have worked with them, organized for more than 7 years. And then when I come to the West, when I make conference presentations, give talks about labor organizing, I feel like for me, it becomes to some extent challenging, because on one hand, I mean, this Western, like white Euro-America based audiences look at me and they want me to speak for the garment workers, but obviously, I mean, I can never speak for them. So I guess my question to you is, and again, I'm not a performance artist, so I'm interested in learning more about, your border crossing experiences and how the kind of work that you do, it gets translated as you cross across borders. And I was specifically think about your roti making project. And when you were talking about, I mean, I totally understand the, like political side of it. I mean, you're trying to make visible this gendered and racialized and class labor, which has a long colonial connotations. But at the same time, when we're making this performance and, like when the performance kind of embodies this whole experience that if you're a Bangladeshi woman, if you're a South Asian woman, I mean, roti making is to some extent your ultimate destiny. You can't be a proper woman unless you know how to make roti. Like, can it also reinforce or essentialize some of the really harmful colonial stereotypes about the third world women? This idea that, they occupy some kind of docile bodies and, their lives are super restricted. And I guess my question to you is, how do you navigate those tensions? On one hand, your work is supposed to challenge this coloniality, those intersecting colonial matrices of power. You're trying to make the invisible labor visible, but at the same time, there's this inherent risk that it will reinforce the very colonized idea that, like third world women are super oppressed, and basically like Bangladesh or South Asia is the site of the problem. So I guess my question is, how do you actually negotiate with those tensions, and how do you communicate with your audience?
In audience, like, is a very interesting subject. Now, when you are in a place, you are in a performance place, like as a performance artist, like Tara also performance artist. In a performance place, actually body transform so different another body is just totally transformed. And for me, like this personally, I do a lot of like for the long duration of performance, I do long diet. When I started the working, long durational working, it's also tough, like, because I don't take break in between my performance. Like when this audience comes, sometimes audience just asks questions, or sometimes I don't talk. Like in roti performance, I didn't talk to performance except the SERW work. That one is a 30-minute or 40-minute performance only. That time I just speak to audience. Is just I ask so many questions to the audience, like, and then they just returned me by answer. And some of question was like, do your husband can make roti every day for you, or do your father made roti for you, like that? But it's not political, but it's very domestic questions, everyday, our life, everyday life. But it's so different in Western and East. Our lifestyle, our gesture, our body language is so different, and daily life also very different, because you can make roti like in Europe is very easily, but here is you need time, at least 1 to 2 hours to making these things. So you can't understand, like in Western people can't understand, like, and I'm not making only for me, it's for all family members. I have 10 family members, so I'm making the 10 family members to everyone's for 4 roti, So is sometimes is like don't understand. They don't also understand like why you are making 1 hour, spending 1 hour making for all family member. They can have their own breakfast, you know. So the idea of the family life or like East Western life is so different, and understanding also very different. But in as a performance body, like the transformations and the space and time is turned into another time, another speaking. Like in serendipity, it was like 9 hours every day. So people also got exhausted to see me like 4 days for the everyday 9 hours. So sometimes they also come and say, you take rest, I'm making for you. So this is the like, you know, like people are coming and people also feeling exhausted. Like I saw you in morning and then in evening, you are still making the dough. So you must be tired. Please take rest. I'm taking part of you. So it's also like, you know, people also have the reaction when see the live performance. So the performance also kind of eyewitness. You have to eyewitness, you know, in the space, in the real physical space. It's not like looking at the presentation and you understanding easily. It has another you know, if you see something, if you see the Tara's performance in live, in visual, is different language.
If I can interrupt this conversation a little bit, and if Nafisa allows me, I want to say in addition to your question, I believe what Nafisa was trying to ask you, this, like when you are performing our own private anthology, the roti making performance in Bangladesh for a Bangladeshi audience, you are somehow changing the volume of the domestic gendered labor, right? For those audience, your performance is perceived in a very different way, maybe with more empathy, or that provokes them to think about this gendered labor, what's happening in the domestic spaces, versus when this performance travels for a white audience in Western spaces, like when you performed in New York for a Asian art conference, right? Then maybe there is an opportunity to rethink, or like, what's your thought about it? For a white audience, they always look at Oriental or South Asian female body as stereotypically works on domestic labor system, or they're oppressed, or they are kind of trapped in their domesticity, right? So whether there is a possibility to reperform those tropes through your performance, or self-exotification through your performance when you're performing for a white audience. That was kind of the question. So like you are dealing two different audience, one audience, yeah, Bangladeshi audience, one audience is Western institutions and museums and places where you're performing, but you're performing as your South Asian self many of the time. And how do you feel about it? Do you feel it somehow problematize the viewership, like how people are perceiving your work and reading your material? Because many of the performances, you are the material, your female body, female person, a female Muslim person is your material, and how people are reading those material.
Yeah, I told very different. Is what performance in a white audience is totally different. Sometimes they don't get, you know, and sometimes they couldn't connect it. I think, especially when I did the tea performance, it's so different. Like environment and space of the performance space also very different. Like in performance space in a gallery, in a frieze, it was like more posh, you know, audience and more posh event in London. So audience also, you know, more educated, more like understanding, but somehow something is missing, the history. You know, they don't link, or they don't tie up the understand what's going on in Asia or in woman body, because their body is
So
so
the
different.
othered body, othered.
Other body, you know, it's like they, and in Bangladesh is like, oh, in people will be interact anyhow, you know, sometimes they will abuse you in the performance space. Sometimes they will like comment you unnecessary, or sometimes they will appreciate you, sometimes they come. So it's so different, you know,
Right.
it's a different way, but different audience.
I see Livia has raised her hand for a while, so.
No, thank you. I think that Oscar, your question really kind of dovetails very nicely on what I was looking to raise, because to me, both the question of audiences and the question of decolonizing has, you know, and I would argue we need to problematize both, because what is left out is the question of class and how that plays within audiences in Bangladesh, right? Or people who come to the Dhaka Art Summit are different from people who go to some other event. And the people who come to Freeze are different from the people who come to the Asian Art Week, which is much more diasporic Asian than white, I would argue. So I think that there's a lot of kind of complicating threads in that negotiation of inside, like there's a lot of kind of murky fluidity between the two. And I think to go also to your question, Firouz, of the garment industry, I mean, a lot of it also is this kind of internal colonialism that's happening now in Bangladesh, and the internal tension. And I'm far from an expert in this field, right? But one of the things that to me, like being in Bangladesh, is that tension and the extreme poverty and the extreme wealth, and the extreme wealth that funds the art world too, right? There's just all these layers that I think that what's interesting to me also about Yasmin's work is that she really enters those spaces.
No, totally, I agree with you, Livia, on that point, that and me, Firoz, Nafisa, we all talk about it all the time, about the class disparity in Bangladesh.
You can't avoid it.
And who have more agency to speak for certain experience and who doesn't, and art is not out of that dynamic. So I totally agree with you on that point. But I also agree with you when you speak about the different contexts and how the audience are very different, right? It kind of requires a longer discussion and conversation how Global South artist is presented in Global North, vice versa, how diasporic artists are presented in all over the world. We are always trapped in for certain audience-based scenario, rather than our work is being conceptualized and presented for a bigger audience, bigger situations where we can freely critique and work can be conceptualized with this wholeness. Firoz has their hand raised.
I find this is what I'm going to say is very problematic, but I've been reflecting on it for a very long time, is that even, for instance, in a Western space, when we are presenting something, to me, I feel like in order for somebody to have the context of the text in the academic spaces in the Western knowledge production setup, that again has a connection that, you know, Leva just talked about the garments industry. If you look at the colonial history, the colonizers needed to create local collaborators to establish this system of exploitation. The colonizers left, but their collaborators have not. They have been producing the same kind of colonial relationship. So I think, and this is absolutely my take. I mean, based on my social location, based on, you know, where I come from, and I come from a place which is very improbable to where I am speaking at the moment. So I feel at times when I see somebody from those locations to come to the Western academic spaces, and even to say things that are probably not very savvy or not very politically informed or epistemologically well-grounded, to be able to present, for instance, if my mother says that my sister doesn't know how to make a roti and therefore she's not a woman, in that case, again, what Livia said about class, also, I think it's possible that, yes, I can make roti and be a woman, but yet I don't have to be docile. I can make, clothes, stitch it, but yet I can be. I know that my mother is not a docile woman, if anything at all. I mean, she raised, single-handedly 10 children. I mean, gave birth to 14 children. So no, she's not a docile woman. She's extremely resourceful, educated, savvy, but she also values immensely what, Nupur was just saying, is that if you don't know how to make a roti perfectly circle, hence I am in favor of building a narrative where, yes, I will make a gold roti, and yet I am not a docile woman. And yes, who is speaking in the academic spaces in Western knowledge production setup is to question. Unfortunately, Tara and I have talked about it before, is that in Western academic spaces, when somebody comes from incredible privileges to a place like, Professor Nafis has studied in the University of Toronto. I mean, if you're an international student, right now, I think you have to pay about 70,000 Canadian dollars yearly tuition fees. So, I mean, if you pay that kind of money, it doesn't matter that you have a brown skin. Yes, in certain places, you are not considered to be the equal of white, but you have a lot of privileges. But then, the both class will be presenting as, okay, here is Tara, and here is somebody who came from there to here, to Harvard, to Princeton. So it's complex. And I think sometimes in the expression of solidarity, the nuances gets lost. So I would rather be burnt at stake and raise questions that are problematic than to have the storm in my head. This is what I'm at the moment in my life.
I'll throw this in and I'll shut my mouth because we're taking away from Nupur's talk, but I teach at a state university, right? My students come from every possible background, and that's what I love about my university. So to me, that is the academic life, and it's not always a story of privilege. And again, I just feel like we need to throw that in, but.
And yes, Livia, I trust you on that point, but also from my experience of navigating education.
I don't disagree with you. Yeah. I'm saying that with you, like, yes.
Navigating institutional, especially art education and liberal arts spaces. Those are privileged kids who come to this country to study from the global south.
International students, yes.
Yes.
But I get the children of the immigrants.
Yeah.
Right. So that's what I'm saying. Absolutely. To come to this country to get education is nuts. And to be honest, like, I find that most students who come internationally want to go to Harvard and Columbia. They don't want to go to Montclair State.
Right.
So yes, I don't disagree with you for sure.
We are almost on the end. I have to end this conversation, but Nafisa have the hand raised. Then I will go back to Yasmin for the ending statement. Then we'll wrap up this wonderful, very engaging, very great conversation. I'm sorry.
Sure, yeah, we're running out of time. So yeah, I'll be quick and just 3 quick points. So I guess like one of the themes that are coming up again and again in this conversation is, the danger of, to some extent, like constructing a community or a group in a linear fashion, right? I mean, we're talking about international students, but there are differences between undergrad international students who pay tuition and then master's and PhD students. Most of them come from, like middle-class family, they have to get good grades and then get funds to attend those elite institutions. So yeah, I mean, I was a master's student, not an undergrad student. And that's the difference, right? I mean, you look at bound screen, you look at international students, and you automatically presume that, that the privileged brown kids, that there might be differences, within that group. The other thing I want to talk about, it's really fascinating, like what gets counted as a credible transnational art, right? And again, I'm not a performance artist. I don't know like how, the selection processes actually work. So like when you're, say for example, and again, I'm fascinated by the roti making project, so I'm kind of talking about it again and again. Like, why does it seem like, like it's I don't know, like an authentic representation of a colonized space, and like why does it attract so many people in the West? Like why people find it fascinating? And I think it kind of goes back to the question of like Orientalist troops. Whereas even if you think about like Bangladesh, like Livia was talking about the question of fluidity and class. If you think about like working class garment workers, right? I mean, it's not about, like knowing how to make a roti to be a woman. I mean, they don't have time to make rotis. And, many of them would just, like eat paurotis and, like paurotis like
Milk
bread.
No.
Yeah, milk bread. So they'll just, like eat parroti in the morning and take parroti at work. Even if you think about, the middle class women, I mean, if you see those like Facebook pages, like where they sell frozen rotis. So it's interesting, like how practices, local culture changes, but then like what gets counted as an authentic art and how those art pieces actually circulates across transnational spaces. And I was fascinated to see that, there was, and again, I'm reading an Indian looking woman, probably like, I'm really interested in learning more about, like the kind of responses you get when you do the demonstration in India, as opposed to, say, for example, like in London or in other Western spaces. And Tara, I mean, you nicely framed, what I was trying to ask. But yeah, I mean, this is fascinating. Thank you so much.
Maybe this is an
for
opportunity
joining us.
for you and Yasmin to connect for more conversation, and I'll do an interview, write a paper about her work, and all these wonderful things will happen about the Roti project. And this is the hope of like introducing us with each other. But also one thing I want to say, privilege is not a linear thing, as Nafisa mentioned. There's multiplicity, there's intersection of the privilege. We need to think about it. And one very weird thing about the art world, as the claimed art person as me, Yasmin and Livia can tell to people, it works in, and Tarfia also. Tarfia Faizullah is here, who's a wonderful Bangladeshi poet, Bengali diaspora, lives in Texas. So art world is weird. Like you don't know how you get tokenized. Sometimes you don't even have control on it. Like we all have to make somehow our work and survive as an artist. So even though we are very critical about the system, but art world is a very elitist and white system. We all have to survive in this spectrum, being an South Asian artist, trans, and all those wonderful tag and categories we have in our life. Yasmin Appa, if you want to say something, then we'll end the conversation.
No, thank you, Tara. Thank you so much. Invite me here. Although I have a lot of problem to speak, I can't finish the whole sentence. Like,
Maybe just apa Bangla bole shesh koren. Amra sob shomoy ইংরেজি বলি। Just do it in Bengali.
No, I'm so
আমার কাছে মনে হয়
happy.
বাংলা কথা বলা শুরু করে দিলে কেউ যদি না বোঝে তো সমস্যা তো নাই।
No.
বুঝতে হবে কেন?
না, যখন ইংরেজিতে হয়।
That can be a
Exactly.
performance
আমার কাছে
itself.
সেরকম মনে হয়।
সেটাই। But I'm so happy that Libya is here, because Libya is my very, very close friend, very wonderful friend. And I'm so happy you came and introduced all of my favorite people. I didn't meet them in personally, but I know them since long year, and they are really, really established, very wonderful people, their own space, own profession. So I'm so happy also because Tara is here. I talked about you, Tara, so many times, and Tara, you are in UK, in US, so you can meet, you can go her house. No, thank you so much to come. Now is morning, like 5:30 now here.
Could hear the azan going off.
Yeah. No, I was hearing the azan on the
Exactly.
back.
Yeah.
So great. Okay. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Nupur Appa, again, like making this time. I know it's very hard waking up.
Thank you, Firoz Bhai. Thank you, Nafiza Appa. Thank you.
Thank you, Nafisa. Thank you, Nupur Appa.
Bye. Nice to meet everyone online.
Bye, Livia.
Thank you.
Bye.
ভালো লাগলো আপনাদের সাথে কথা বলে।
Thank you.
Thank you, Narayan.